Using this beautiful sign from the Dollar Tree, we are going to pop off Harvest Wishes. I am going to be turning this into a very substantial high-end piece using this pumpkin from the Dollar Plus section, but you can use any pumpkins you have on hand, and all of these different picks from the Dollar Tree. I like to take my picks and cut them apart, but we're going to do that in just a second. We also are going to need a dowel rod and a little finial that's going to go on top of the dowel rod. Take your stake and stick that down into the pumpkin, creating the hole that you're going to be using the stake in, and then pull that back out, add some hot glue onto your finial topper. I get these from Hobby Lobby whenever they have their wood section on sale, and I pick up a whole bunch of them. But I love this little wood finial topper. It gives it a nice finished high-end farmhouse look. I'm going to take 2 of these stacking tumbling blocks, and I'm going to put that right on the back of my harvest sign. And this is going to allow the stake to sit in there securely without it just popping off. If I just took this stake and glued it on without some sort of a support, it will pop off. I don't like projects like that. I want my things to look store-bought and high-end. So that is really going to make it nice and locked in there, safe and secure. Go ahead and take your scissors and punch a whole bunch of little holes all around the top of the pumpkin. And now we're going to go back to those florals, and we're going to use our wire cutters. Friends, if you don't have wire cutters when you work with floral projects, go and pick up some wire cutters. It will save your scissors. I, for years, used to use just regular scissors, and it's amazing what wire cutters can do. I'll link mine down below, the ones that I got off of Amazon. I love my wire cutters. Now, once I've got all of my florals cut down to size, we're going to put hot glue in the holes. And I like my hot glue gun really hot, so I can squeeze all that glue in there and work around through the different picks without the glue drying for me. But just take your time, put the florals in that you would like, and whatever color pumpkin you would like too. You can also do an orange pumpkin. I know the Dollar Tree has some deep rustic orange, and as well as some really light, fun colored oranges, and I even think a couple of blue and green pumpkins this year. Once I've got all of my picks down in there and I like how full it is, I'm going to take some more hot glue, put that back into the original staked hole that I made, and put that stake right down in there. Now I can't end there. I really want to make it look more farmhouse chic. So I'm going to add a bow and of course a button. We're going to just put a cute little button right on there. And at this point, it is so beautiful to put on a table anywhere in your home, and it is such a showstopper for just a couple of dollars. This sign is super trendy right now, and I know a lot of you are trying to get your hands on it. If it hasn't been in your store yet, just make sure you just keep checking back. They're coming to all the stores because this is a $1.25 sign. I'm also going to take one of these other wood signs from years past. They bring them back every year. This cute darling wood pumpkin decor piece, and then we are going to just remove the bow, we're going to remove the twine, and we're going to come in with, well, I'm going to use this. You can paint it whatever color you honestly want. I'm going to go with a really beautiful creamy orange color. I'm going to paint it all over the front and back because Heidi likes a good backside being finished. I like things to look store-bought here on my channel. I don't like things to look, you know, rough on the backside. I just think finish, you know, the job and make it look pretty on both sides. Now, when it comes to working with scrapbook paper, I know that there are a lot of different ways to do it, but this is how I do it. So you can cut it, or you can take your finger and just trace and press along the side. That's going to give you the initial outline. And because I like a farmhouse look, I'm going to come back in with some sandpaper once I glue it down and sand off the extra edges that I don't want. If you want it to be more precise, you could always crease it down very, very nicely, as I did for the first step of this, and then, you know, just come in with your scissors and cut right along that line. But I like my edges to be rough because I like that farmhouse distress look. Not too heavy on the rustic side, but lightly. So you can see that I got all 3 pieces covered with scrapbook paper, and now I'm going to come up at the top, and I thought it would be really pretty to add this texture of the twine on the stem of the pumpkin. And we're going to just wrap around until you have the whole thing covered. Up at the top is the trickiest part. That's why I'm showing you here. I put glue and I just take my time getting the glue to adhere. And once you go around a couple times, it builds it up so it'll stay in place, and then you just glue down the last bit of it. Now on the back, we're going to bring these two together to really elevate that beautiful pumpkin pie sign with the pumpkin. I just thought these two were begging to be together, and it really elevates the look of this sign that is just so pretty. So you can see here that I'm reinforcing my twine with some popsicle stick, and I made a handle, and the backside looks so clean and finished. And I just think, you know, take the extra time to just paint the backside, make it look nice, maybe cover with fabric. That's just me. I like to show everyone here on my channel that it is possible to have a nice backside to your projects. And then to finish, we're going to add on a couple of beautiful bows and a little button. This is my favorite sign. The Dollar Tree came out this fall season, and I wanted to turn it into something really special since it's such a large sign. I thought it would be so fun to turn it into an advent calendar with pockets. So I cut this dowel down to size, and I put some glue on some fabric, and I'm going to show the measurements for this in just a moment. But I'm getting a very large piece of felt and a piece of drop cloth, and I wanted to have these two different tones layered, and you can see here that I'm gluing them all together. You could sew this. I definitely recommend it if you like to sew, but I know a lot of you on here are not seamstress and you don't sew. So if you do, make sure you get a brayer roller, and this is going to allow you to be able to smooth out that hot glue. Now I wanted some scallops on the side of my advent calendar, so I'm just using a large jumbo size tongue depressor stick that I get from like Walmart. I traced some scallops and then cut them out with some small fussy cutting scissors. This is honestly the best to be able to get into these tight spaces using a small pair of scissors. And I just like how the scallop looked. You don't have to do the scallop, but I personally loved it. Now I'm going to glue on this sign, and you can see that I am using quite a bit of glue, and I want to make sure that I'm using quite a bit of the fabric at the top to really glue on there so that the weight of the things in the pockets are not going to separate the fabric from the sign over time. And now I'm going to just use that brayer again. I'm going to roll all over it. I'll make sure I link that down below. Now here's the measurement for the fabric. For the yellow, I used a thick felt, and then the tan is actually a drop cloth. Now I'm figuring out the sizing I need for my pockets to fit across the width and the length of this advent calendar. I went ahead and just put down my measurements again. Now I'm moving on to cutting my pockets, and you can see here for my cotton fabric that has this pattern on it. A lot of people use this for quilting. I'm going to go ahead and fold it over and double it up. So if I'm doubling up the fabric, I'm going to use a 9 by 4.5 inch. If not, if it's just a solo piece of fabric, I'm using the 4.5 by 4.5. I thought I would also share my rotating cutting mat. It's a self-healing cutting mat, and you can use it for sewing or crafting. I love this thing. It is my new favorite. So I'm going to link that down below, as well as the brayer tool. Now that my pockets are all cut out and I've decided what I want each pattern to be in what place, I'm going to go ahead and start working on my pockets. Now for the really thin fabric, like this really thin green fabric, I'm taking some of that drop cloth and just lining the inside of it with some of the drop cloth, just a 4.5 by 4.5 square. And then now I'm going to go ahead and glue that down. I put something right in the place of where the insert of the pocket would be, just so that I can create a little bit of an opening, and it's not going to have it where it's a perfect square laying on the actual drop cloth. So once I've got all of those glued down, because you want to be able to put your hand inside there without struggling, I then moved on to the tags. The tags are just little garden stakes that you can get in the floral section at the Dollar Tree. And I went ahead and popped off those sticks from the back, and I'm just hand painting on all of the numbers 1 through 16. I went and I looked at the calendar, and I wanted each pocket to represent a Saturday throughout all of the fall season. So every Saturday we can do something fun, like go pick out pumpkins, or we can, work on picking out our costumes, and each little pocket will have some type of a treat that will be also inside of it for my kids. I love advent calendars. I cannot say enough about them because I just feel like it gets everyone so excited for the season, no matter what it is, for Christmas, for fall, for spring. I'm a big fan of them. So now I'm coming in with a bunch of my buttons. I collect buttons. I love buttons. I have always loved buttons. So I'm going to go ahead and just glue a whole bunch of those all over, and the hot glue does a great trick. I'm also at the top where the hole originally was for the twine of this sign. I'm going to add on some of these half wood beads because I just thought it made it look more farmhouse, and it really cleaned up the top. And to finish off the project, I flipped it over, I put down some twine, and then to reinforce the twine, I'm taking a jumbo popsicle stick, and I'm just going to put some glue. I cut it down to size and put that right on top to help reinforce it and make it stronger. This DIY is so much fun. It can be a little advanced, but I'm going to try to slow all the steps down to show you everything. I'm going to start with this scrap piece of fabric that I have here, and I'm only going to glue about 3 inches up on each side, and then I'm going to gather in the bottom, add in some hot glue, take some yarn, wrap it around, and tie a knot. I'm going to then repeat the same thing on the other side because we're bundling up the ends. Think of almost like a lumbar pillow. That's kind of what we're doing at this point, but we're going to end up filling it and stuffing it and turning it into the most darling stand-up pumpkin decor that is so whimsical and just happy. When I look at it, I just get so happy. So now what I'm going to do, now that I flipped it inside out, I'm going to go ahead and bring up the sides just a little bit more on the bottom part because I'm going to go ahead and open it up, and I'm going to drop in some of these glass beads. This is what's going to help it stand up and be able to be sturdy at the bottom. So you can see here that that's where the bundle is that I gathered together, and then I put in all of those glass beads, and now I'm moving on to starting to stuff it. We want to make sure that it's stuffed really well, but not too full that you can't do the next step. Enough to be able to shift around the batting that's on the inside. Then I start to lessen the opening by gluing the sides up a little bit more, stuff in the last of that stuffing, and then I start to kind of roll it and play with it, and you can see there that I still have it not fully sealed yet. I'm going to go ahead and do the bottom part of my pumpkin snowman body, and I'm going to twist it really tight and then tie a knot. Then once I've got that knot in place, I went ahead and closed the last of the hole, making sure that I had enough batting in there. That's why I wanted to keep it open until I got the bottom part done on the pumpkin. And I'm going to go ahead and find where his middle of his body is going to be and his head. So again, I'm going to just keep playing with it until I find a nice middle spot for me to squeeze and tie on that yarn nice and tight. And you can see at this point I've got my 3 different sections. At this point you're going to massage it to make sure everything looks nice and round. or lumpy, whichever you want. You could make a really lumpy pumpkin. And then what I do here is I actually add some hot glue all around inside that yarn where I tied it. And I'm going to compress the fabric down. So at this point, it's going to squish the pumpkin, and this is where he's really going to take life and start to look like a little pumpkin. You can see right here as I'm holding it together and letting the hot glue dry, it looks like the 3 sections of a snowman pumpkin. Then at this point, we could start embellishing it. I put a branch up at the top. I added on some buttons for his tummy. And then, because it's a little pumpkin snowman, I'm going to go ahead and use some black felt and my tiny, tiny little scissors to go ahead and cut out a smile and a triangle for his nose, and I'm going to glue that on into place, making sure they're nice and secure. And then I'm going to move on to adding on a scarf. I'm going to go with this black and white buffalo check. And I always like to manipulate where my scarf is going because I want to be able to see the buttons. I don't want it to be flapping in a weird place. This is also a really great time to be able to cover up anything that maybe you don't want to see, like some hot glue that where the seam is. I'm going to just pull that over and just play with it until I get it to where I want it to be. Then I'm going to add on some button eyes. And at this point, he is just such a cute little snowman pumpkin. And I'm going to come into the arm area, cut a tiny little hole, and then wiggle in some sticks. The best way to do this is just a tiny hole, work in that stick, and then add some hot glue to let the glue wrap around the arm and pleat around the fabric so it really holds it into place. Then I thought I would embellish it just a little bit more. You could stop there or go a little further, which is what I love to do here on my channel. I decided to add on a little green heart on the side because this particular inspiration with the green heart was something that I had seen on Pinterest that someone had made a long time ago. I thought that would be so cute to add that onto this little pumpkin. And then up at the top, I'm going to add on the same fabric for the heart, but I'm making a little leaf up at the top and I'm going to glue it up there, as well as I'm going to bring in another leaf that I had left over from a pick because I saw it sitting there and I thought, you know what, I'm going to use that too. And I like the contrast between the two different green tones. So I just cut off one of the leaves and just pinched it into place. And then right at the joint of those leaves that come onto the branch, the top of the pumpkin, the stem, I'm going to go ahead and add on some star buttons because I just love these star buttons. And then the last is to just pick off any hot glue and he's ready to be displayed.